You hate to see it when somebody plays stupid games and wins stupid prizes. But that is exactly what happened to the radical woke mayor of Chicago when he said this at a recent event this past weekend. Take a listen, and a warning, guys, this is a crazy thing to say out loud.
Some detractors that will push back on me and say, you know, the only thing that the mayor talks about is the hiring of black people. No, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else. We are the most generous people on the planet. I don't know too many cultures that have play cousins. That's how generous we are. We just make somebody a family member, right? That's just how we are. And so business and economic neighborhood development, the deputy mayor is a black woman. Department of Planning and Development is a black woman. Infrastructure deputy mayor is a black woman. Chief operations officer is a black man. Budget director is a black woman. Senior advisor is a black man. And I'm laying that out because when you ask how do we ensure that our people get a chance to grow.
So this woke progressive mayor actually just suggested that black people are more generous than other races. No, they're just people like anybody else, and individuals can be greedy or great or kind or mean. It's like bizarre racial stereotyping going on here. And then he's bragging about all the black people he's appointed to, his city government, which if those are the best people for the job, great. But he just kind of said that he is staffing his team with black people because he thinks they're like somehow superior to others, which one is a wild thing to admit. Two is not true. Everybody is created equal and all races should be equal in society and under the law. And just imagine if a white mayor said the opposite. Like, that would be a national scandal. And this really should be too. It is fine to support, us living in a pluralistic and diverse society. I do, absolutely. I think we should be respectful of people of all backgrounds, treat everyone fairly, treat everyone the same. But this progressive vision of like a pro-identity, active pro-minority discrimination, or even stereotyping in the opposite direction is not progressive at all. It seems like deeply toxic and divisive and radical and regressive. And it's almost certainly illegal. This mayor went up on that stage and bragged about this, and now he's being investigated by the Department of Justice. The New York Times reports that the Justice Department says it will investigate Chicago after the mayor's remarks about black hires. The Trump administration said on Monday that it had opened a civil rights investigation into the city of Chicago to see if its mayor or others had engaged in a pattern of discrimination by hiring a number of black people to senior positions. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division posted on social media a letter it sent to Chicago's mayor, Brandon Johnson, quoting remarks he made Sunday at a local church in which he praised the number of black people in top city jobs. So this is just an investigation, and maybe they look into it and there's no there, and he didn't openly discriminate against anyone. He just happened to hire the best people for the job for all these roles he listed, and in every case it was a black person. Maybe that's the truth. I don't know what the truth is, but I certainly think when you're this open and brazen about it, and it is illegal to discriminate on the basis of race or gender or anything else on the basis of these protected characteristics under civil rights law, it is absolutely illegal to do that in government hiring. And it's worthy of at least looking into in a fair and objective investigation. And if that's what this is, it shouldn't be like a politicized witch hunt or anything. But if that's what it is, then I support that. Because let's be so for real. It is not some right-wing conspiracy theory to suspect that in institutions or organizations controlled by ultra left-wing progressives, anti-white or anti-male or whatever, different forms of discrimination have occurred. I mean, we've covered on this show businesses and even colleges and government organizations where they've been busted for specifically saying, we're only looking to hire a woman of color for this role, which is incredibly illegal, not allowed. But they put it in writing. Journalist Jesse Singal wrote a great article that I'll link to titled, "Of course liberal institutions are engaging in illegal hiring practices on the basis of race. He says this will turn out to have been a very bad idea. He explains that if you work inside liberal media or government or nonprofit organizations, it has been just made clear at times that in certain roles, they're not looking to hire a white person. People either didn't seem to realize how illegal that was, or they did, and that's why they didn't always put those requests in writing. Washington Post journalist Megan McArdle similarly wrote on Twitter, I've talked about this with lawyers because I've been repeatedly surprised when folks I didn't know very well would openly say to me that they were looking to hire a woman of color for X position. I understood that this was illegal. They very clearly did not. I don't know for sure whether the city government of Chicago is guilty of this or not, but I do think it should be investigated. But I think it's undeniable that some institutions and organizations have engaged in this kind of discrimination, and it's not legal, it's not moral, and it's not okay. There should be a reckoning. People should be held to account for it. And I think now that we have a Republican led Department of Justice and its Civil Rights Division that actually wants to look into this stuff rather than the Biden administration, which I think would probably turn a blind eye to a lot of this, I think they may go looking for it and they might come up with a lot of very damning receipts, because I imagine that what some of these folks like Megan and Jesse are saying is probably true, and that a lot of these institutions and organizations were brazen about their illegal discrimination in ways that wasn't very smart, because they felt kind of invincible because these laws weren't being enforced, and it felt like culturally it was moving in this DEI direction. But now, even just a few years later, when those emails get subpoenaed and those Slack messages get brought in as court evidence, I think there's going to be some serious skeletons in a lot of people's closets, and I support accountability for where this stuff has been allowed to fester, because it's not just illegal. I mean, I really do think it's immoral and wrong to discriminate against people on the basis of their immutable characteristics in any direction. And I think most tragically, it reinforces the divides between these groups and racial strife and gender wars and all this stuff, where I think most Americans like me want to live in a world where this stuff fades into the background and isn't the defining aspect of our lives, and we're not so sharply divided into these groups. Well, reverse discrimination, just as much as old-fashioned discrimination, makes that dream less and less realistic. So I support it being cracked down upon, but you let me know what you think in the comments. Up next, we got to check in with the UK, because they are not okay. I mean, this latest censorship story, this latest free speech nightmare out of the UK, guys, well, we're going to take a listen to some reporting from GB News, the right-leaning news source over in the UK. But honestly, this is just dystopian.
Extraordinary breaking news, which you just heard there from San Francis. Lucy Connolly, she's the wife of a Conservative councillor. Her appeal against the 31-month sentence for putting out an intemperate tweet in the aftermath of the Southport murders has been dismissed, so she will remain in prison. She's not particularly. She's.
Let's just have a minute to think about this country, right? This is a mother who has now got 284 days to remain away from her child and her husband, and who knows, her parents, maybe her extended family, because she wrote one angry post on social media. And she also says that this is because she herself was suffering from bereavement.
Yeah.
Tell you what she said. This was in the wake of the stabbings in Southport. Her post read on X, Twitter, "Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the bleep hotels full of bleeps for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it." It was up for about 3.5 hours. It was viewed 300,000 times. She thought, that was probably a mistake, wasn't it? I let my anger get in the way.
Yeah.
She deleted it.
31 months in jail, nearly 3 years.
The implication being of this...
Prison's being overflowing, by the way.
What does it mean if you live in a country where you can't express your views, no matter how unpalatable they might be to other people? That you can literally have a knock on the door, you get arrested, you get put into prison, you get taken away from your children. What good does this do other than to tell you at home, keep your voices shut, wind your necks in, I don't want you to say what you think? This is what this government are telling us.
Wow. Just wow. Nearly 3 years in jail for an angry and unhinged tweet. That is not something that happens in a free country or in a country with any semblance of free speech, y'all. It is simply not. To be clear, her tweet was wrong. You should never, and this clearly I don't think was meant literally, it was meant in an inflammatory and hyperbolic way. You should never call for violence in any way, no matter how upset you are about, in this case, it was in the aftermath of a tragic crime that I think they believed to be committed by an illegal immigrant. It turned out not to be. But anyway, it was this passionate thing. She deleted just a few hours after she posted it. It was wrong. It was irresponsible. Maybe she should have been banned from Twitter from it or faced some sort of civil consequence, like in society. Maybe she could have gotten pushback from friends and family saying, like, you went too far, delete this. But the idea that it is a criminal matter or that somebody would be put behind bars for years simply because of, like the host said, an intemperate or angry tweet in the aftermath of a tragedy, that is dystopian. That is Orwellian. And I know that stuff gets overused and people are like very quick to say that, but it really is. And it's not just this one woman. This is a widespread phenomenon in the United Kingdom. Our cultural neighbors, who at least historically had a proud tradition in their common law of free speech and in an open society, well, they've now gone this really disturbing and dark path. And there's extensive reporting on this. I've talked about that on the show before, of hundreds and even thousands of people being investigated, charged, and in some cases imprisoned over social media posts. Like, there's such a clear chilling effect from that in a democratic society where everyone's supposed to voice their views, supposed to hash it all out, and then may the best idea win. You can't do that when people are afraid to speak in anger or in passion because they might end up going to jail for years. We're not even talking about paying a fine and like getting in trouble and having to go to court. We're talking about multiple years in prison. And I mean, I am more sympathetic because she's a mother, she has kids she'll miss out on. Legally, that's not really relevant because, I mean, if two people commit the same crime, it should be the same punishment regardless of their personal circumstances. But it does make you feel worse for the woman just personally. And this is what I always come back to with these crazy stories. Like, to some extent, I'm like, wow. And I just marvel at the insane nature of it all across the pond. But I always come back to this important truth. This would absolutely happen in some blue states in America, or maybe in some red states on some other issues, if we did not have a First Amendment that was robustly upheld by our legal system. It's not perfect, doesn't always do the job, but by and large, it ensures that this kind of dystopian thing could never happen in the United States. And for that, it should be cherished and jealously protected and defended from people on either side who would chip away at it. Or we could very well end up just a few years down the road with situations like this happening in our country. And that's not something I ever want to see happen. All right, guys, that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please do make sure to subscribe. If you aren't yet, do hit that like button before you go. Let me know your thoughts on today's episode in the comments. Do remember to check out my second bonus channel, send in voice notes, check out the merch, yada, 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 and we'll talk again real soon.